Islam, peace and greetings to you all. I rise giving all praise to Allah and the highest of honors to His holy and divine Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I extend those honors to the harbinger and forerunner, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I extend honors to all true and divine prophets, and I extend honors to you all, for when man honors man, he honors his Father God Allah. In another chapter of Show and Prove, we Moorish American Muslims once again are stepping up to the plate to show and prove that what Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought to us was 100% all wise, right, and exact. This video is done in response to some guy named Inky, a pseudoscientist, a pseudologist, a mere quack in a white coat, who makes the claim that Moorish Americans are wrong when we say that black according to science means death, all because people like himself have been brainwashed into believing that they are actually a black people. This brother claims to be a biologist and has absolutely zero credentials to substantiate his claims. He once publicly went on Blog Talk radio show, him and the chief myth maker, Ali Muhammad, and said that they have a pill that can turn light-skinned black people back black again. Yes, people, this is the mental quackery that is abound in this so-called conscious community. This is what happens when ego precedes reason. Their arguments are so completely nonsensical that I felt it proper to respond. Firstly, it was the pale-skinned nations of Europe who began this labeling of our people as Negra, which is a word that was used by the Moors to describe the black loamy Niger River in West Africa, among other things, and where we get the word Negro from today. I will delve into this aspect shortly. It is brothers like these ones who wish to use the word Moor and black interchangeably because for them there is some financial gain to be had, as more and more of our people are starting to wake up and the mindset of the conscious community is trending now towards the Moorish American Muslims of the Moorish Science Temple of America, as we are starting to show and prove and back up our teachings with 100% accuracy. Most people can't let go of the slave label of black, and so they will side with these ones who make such frivolous claims. This is what these brothers often do. They use images that have shock value and couple that with their cornball logic to present their claim to those whom are already deaf, dumb, and blind and actually want to pay money to these guys to take a trip to Fantasy Island. The mental growth of our people stagnates every time these brothers speak. First, we will give a simple reading lesson based on the etymology of the words black and contrast that with the word brown, the color most resembling of our skin tone. We will start with black as a noun from the etymology. You can read it for yourself. It is clear, based on the etymology of the above, that you do not get the term black referring to the quote-unquote African until 1640. And before that, they would call the Moors blackamoor to distinguish them from all other Muslims, as the term Moor would eventually become a synonym for a Mohammedan no matter their race or nationality. The Christians called us black devils because of the Moabite invasion of Europe. And somewhere in this time frame, when the Moors occupied parts of Europe, do we find the Christians using black to describe the Moabites, who are the Moors. Now we will review the adjective form. The very first thing that we note here is that black is a German word. This means that this word cannot be traced back to any languages originally spoken by Moors or whom these brothers blindly call black people. This means that you would have to go back into the vernacular of the ancient languages and find one, just one record showing and proving that we called ourselves a black people in any ancient native tongue prior to our contact with the pale-skinned nations of Europe, and I have asked the whole field to show and prove, and none have produced not one piece of proof other than their warped theories. Prophet Noble Drew Ali whom many are starting to realize brought us the actual, undeniable facts declare that, according to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the Holy Land of Canaan. What your ancient forefathers were, you are today without doubt or contradiction. There is no one who is able to change man from the descendant nature of his forefathers, unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator Allah himself. Now let us review the etymology for the word brown, the color that most describes the hue of our skins. When reviewing the etymology of the word brown, which is produced by the German word brun, to where we get the word brunette, not only do we see that it best describes the most of our people, but it is a clear contrast to the word black, used as a descriptive, and etymologically, the word essentially, meaning black, leads us back to pale and bleach. Here is the word brown. Brunette. Both of these words are from Germanic sources and have never been used as national names by our people. Some have pointed to the name Sudan, but if you dig deeper into the history, this name Sudan was given by what has been dubbed pale-skinned Arabs who had Christianized Islam with ahadith and theories. Even the name Nubia is a name given by them and cannot be found in any ancient usage prior. Both of these names, Sudan and Nubia, are used to denote slaves. If our people were as smart as they think that they are, why have they just accepted the false notion that a man can be black without ever doing one shred of research into the word, which would have forced them to try to find the color closely resembling their own skin tones, which is of a brownish hue? The color brown is the color which closely resembles our people, and the oldest known description of how our people look, as described by a European, comes from the Greek poet Homer in his Iliad, which dates all the way back to 760-710 BC. Charles Anthon, who wrote the notes of the first 6 books of Homer in his Iliad in 1878, said this: "Who the Homeric Ethiopians were is a matter of doubt. The poet elsewhere speaks of 2 divisions of them, one dwelling near the rising, the other near the setting of the sun, both having embrowned visages from their proximity to that luminary, and both leading a blissful existence, because living amid a flood of light, and as a natural concomitant of blissful existence, blameless and pure, and free from every kind of moral defilement." Now we will just simply look at these words that Homer used. Embrowned visages, and what they mean today. Embrowned, to make brown or dusky, to darken. Visage, the face or facial expression of a person. Countenance, appearance or aspect. So what Homer is doing is essentially saying that the people that he saw were brown in appearance, the same color that you would associate with my skin, or even Brother Inky or Ali Muhammad, the myth makers. Now let us delve into the genetics here briefly. Here are images of the bush people of the Kalahari. Notice their complexions. I have reviewed several pictures taken of this tribe, and they were also featured in a movie titled The Gods Must Be Crazy. I am darker than most of these Moors. However, their haplogroup represents one of the oldest known, unmutated, unmixed haplotypes on the planet. Contrast. Here are the Yarawa tribe of the Andamanese Islands off the coast of India. A skin graft was done of this tribe, and it was noted that they are the darkest people on the planet Earth. Notice, their skin is dark brown and not black. Their haplogroup belongs to the Asian M haplogroup, and geneticists have ruled out an African origin of this tribe's haplogroup. Being an Asian M haplogroup means that the Yarawa developed much later than the Kalahari Bush people, as their haplogroup, meaning the Yarawa, shows a mutation from the original to which the Bush peoples of the Kalahari possess. The Asian M haplogroup possessed by the Yarawa can be found in India, Bangladesh, and Japan, where the frequencies range from 60 to 80%. In fact, the only other people that share the same genetic haplogroup, D-M174, as the Andamanese are the Ainu Aboriginals of Japan. These bush tribes live in desert-like conditions. If they were genetically born near the equator and traveled back down to South Africa, would they not retain their so-called black skin, being that the Kalahari is a desert that possesses very little water and represents some of the worst, hottest, arid conditions on the planet? If the original people on the planet had black skin, as has been falsely claimed by many who are simply deaf, dumb, and blind to their true selves, then how can the Kalahari Bush people be lighter in skin tone than the Andamanese people and most so-called African Americans in the United States of America? Think, people, just think. What also gets me about these types is that when you ask them to show and prove that black people exist, they never say, "Look at me, I'm black." They usually try to find a picture of someone who is supposedly black, pictures which are usually altered or have bad camera lighting, and present them and say, "See?" What their minds are failing to register in that moment is that if they have to go and search for a picture of someone with black skin, they themselves cannot be black. These are images that were recently posted on Facebook by Afrocentric scholar Runoko Rashidi. He claims that these people are black, but upon close analysis, we can clearly see that these people have black paint on their bodies performing some sort of ritual. I mean, this brother right here has his hands painted black. Who has black palms? I guess these are yellow-red people, huh? Psychosis means mental sickness. If anybody is familiar with my lobster in a crab barrel analogy, you now understand why I make that claim. Now on to the actual meat of this discussion. Black, according to science, means death. What the modern thinker fails to realize is that the applicability of what we call science today just came into usage during the 19th century. Before that, it was called natural philosophy, which was the philosophical study of nature in the physical universe. The naturalist theologian William Whewell was the one who coined the term sciences. The Oxford Dictionary dates the origin of the word to 1834. Before then, the word science meant any kind of well-established knowledge, and the label of scientist did not exist. Some examples of the application of the term natural philosophy to what we would call natural science are Isaac Newton's 1687 scientific treatise, which is known as the Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, and Lord Kelvin and Peter Guthrie Tait's 1867 treatise called Treatise on Natural Philosophy, which helped define much of modern physics that brothers like Inky and the Mythmaker rely on today. Natural philosophy is the precursor of natural sciences such as physics, and that will be the focus of why we say black according to science means death. Truth does not change or pass away. What is truth yesterday will undoubtedly and unequivocally be truth today. If what was called truth yesterday and we find out today that it was wrong, then it was never truth to begin with. It was only believed to be true. And we know that belief is what man thinks perhaps is true. Let me show and prove through science, which is none other than natural philosophy, that branch of physics that we have now, how black actually means death. We will start with natural philosophical knowledge, as that is all science means, and then match it up with today's mundane sciences. We read from page 490 of Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages that In alchemy is found again the perpetuation of the universal mystery. For as surely as Jesus died upon the cross, Hiram at the west gate of the temple, Orpheus on the banks of the river Hebros, Krishna on the banks of the Ganges, and Osiris in the coffin prepared by Typhon, so in alchemy, unless the elements first die, the great work cannot be achieved. The stages of the alchemical processes can be traced in the lives and activities of nearly all the world's saviors and teachers, and also among the mythologies of several nations. It is said in the Bible that except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. In alchemy, it is declared that without putrefaction, the great work cannot be accomplished. What is it that dies on the cross, is buried in the tomb of the mysteries, and that dies also in the retort and becomes black with putrefaction? And what is it that does the same thing in the nature of man, that he may rise again phoenix-like from his own ashes, caput mortuum? Now let us match that up with the Moorish science as laid out in our Moorish Quran. Chapter 27 reads, "In flesh of man there is the essence of the resurrection of the dead. This essence, quickened by the holy breath, will raise the substance of the body to a higher tone and make it like the substance of the bodies of the planes above, which human eyes cannot behold. There is a holy ministry in death. The essence of the body cannot be quickened by the holy breath until the fix is solved. The body must disintegrate, and this is death. And then upon these pliant substances Allah breathes, just as he breathed upon the chaos of the deep when worlds were formed, and life springs forth from death. The carnal form is changed to form divine. The will of man makes possible the action of the holy breath. When will of man and will of Allah are one, the resurrection is a fact. In this, we have the chemistry of mortal life, the ministry of death, the mystery of deific life." So when we hear brothers like Inky call himself Minister Inky, and he goes around preaching that black means life when in all actuality black means death, our verse elucidates the mind state of brothers like this. Remember what Manly P. Hall said. He said that what is it that dies on the cross is buried in the tomb of the mysteries, and that dies also in the retort and becomes black with putrefaction. On page 124 of said book we read, "The green color alludes to the vegetation which covers the face of the earth, and therefore represents the robe of nature. The black represents death and corruption as being the way to a new life and generation. White, yellow, and red signify the three principal colors of the alchemical, hermetical, universal medicine after the blackness of its putrefaction is over." You truly do not understand these sciences because you are caught up in mundane science, pseudo-biology, which does not give you the philosophical meanings of the ancients, its father, so to speak. When we get into the sciences of the mundane, we see that putrefaction is one stage in the decomposition of a dead animal, and it can be described as the decomposition of proteins, which result in the eventual breakdown of cohesion between tissues and the liquefaction of most organs. And this is why the body starts to turn black. We see the same thing when leaves and fruits such as bananas begin to die when they have been plucked from their life sources. According to the Encyclopedia of Death and Dying, we read, under normal conditions, the intestinal bacteria in a corpse produces large amounts of foul-smelling gas that flows into the blood vessels and tissues. It is this gas that bloats the body, turns the skin from green to purple to black. Black is usually associated with Egypt because of the fertile black soils of the Nile, which is composed of corrupt and putrefied matter that gives its decaying nutrients to the soil along the Nile. This is the meaning of Kemet. It has nothing to do with the people calling themselves black. It's not near Egyptian glyph or papyrus. Speaks of man speaking in the singular, calling himself, or even in the third person, a black man or a black person for that matter. The Egyptians acknowledge that out of this soil arose growth, symbolized by the color white. Used ceremonially It is symbolic to the vegetative growth. And this is why Osiris, who is sometimes depicted as a black figure, is also shown in the dress of the white priest with green skin. Osiris represents the god of the underworld, god of the dead. These things were made clear in Manly P. Hall's citation above, made clear in our Moorish Quran, made clear upon the very walls of ancient Egypt, as this is a high science that we are dealing with here. The science of the corporeal and incorporeal man. Even in other schools of thought which are as ancient as Egypt, like the Enlightenment schools of the Buddha, we see the same thing expressed, to where black is a color of hate that has to be transmuted into a degree of compassion. When a biological entity starts its putrefactive stage, its stage of dying, it turns black. This is called necrosis, and according to some sources, Negro and Necro share the same root. In the original Moorish questionnaire, the question is asked and answered by Prophet Noble Drew Ali. In all reality, what is a Negro? Answer: a Negro is a four-legged animal. In the second questionnaire, it is asked and answered, what is meant by the word Negro? Negro, a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. Both of these are correct, and we believe that the Prophet changed the first one because of the extreme position that Moors were starting to take towards the Europeans in those days. Let us relate this with the historical references. In the book Light and Truth, collected from the Bible in Ancient and Modern History by Robert Benjamin Lewis, on page 339 and 340, while using the definitions of the Negro as cited by several European dictionaries of that day, he cites, Negro is derived from the Latin term niger, or Niger, meaning black. Niger, a Latin word, was formerly used by the Moors, the old Romans, to designate any black inferior object, etc. A plant, a marsh, flat, moist ground, bog, or animal. This again proves that Prophet Noble Drew Ali again brought to us everything that is historically all-wise right and exact. And the Europeans use this same definition that we use to describe things like a black loamy river, as the Niger is, as something low or base. And they turned around and called us this, being that we were stripped of our nationality. And now these brothers, blinded by their own ambitions, refuse to even look further into these things. They are victims of their own mental slavery and believe that they're going to do what none other before them have done. Save us so-called black people that do not even exist. It is a crying shame. Just listen to all of these so-called scholars and master teachers and leaders and these young phenoms. You'll hear them all call our people niggers in their discourses. Why? Because you cannot separate black from nigger, as they are of the same exact source and root from one language to another and bear the same intent. And the idea that the word nigger is the same as the ancient word naga, which means king, or the ancient snake or serpent deity in ancient Kush, is so utterly laughable and implausible that, I must say, in the land of the blind, the man with one eye is king. This brings us to the word negrido. The alchemical sciences, which is a part of the natural philosophy spoken of earlier, we find negrido, or blackness, which means putrefaction or decomposition. Alchemists believe that as a first step in the pathway to the philosopher's stone, all alchemical ingredients had to be cleansed and cooked extensively to a uniform black matter. They had to be destroyed. This is what the mystery schools call the magnum opus. It has three phases: negrido, rubido, and albedo. Negrido represents death and decay of matter, as we shown earlier from Manly P. Hall's treatise and our Moorish Holy Quran. Within the individual, it represents the stage of ignorance and confusion, that which my people have now. The second stage is albedo, or whiteness. This represents the purity gained from having knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, and living a civilized life with the proper knowledge of self. This purity, which is literally referred to as absolutio, means the washing away of impurities. Please refer to chapter 4 in our Moorish Holy Quran for further details. The final phase is rubido. Rubido is a Latin word meaning redness that was adopted by alchemists to define the final major stage in the magnum opus. Both gold and the philosopher's stone were associated with the color red, as rubedo signaled alchemical success and the end of the great work. And you can now understand why the red fez in Islamism of the Moorish American Muslims is so important and prevalent. Moorish science encompasses all sciences. Remember that. This now brings us to necrosis. Necrosis is a Greek word meaning dead. Death, the stage of dying, the act of killing, is a form of cell injury that results in the premature death of cells in living tissue. If black means life, as this brother Inky claims, why is it that when a thing dies, it starts to turn black? Think, people, think. The brother Inky, or one of his cohorts, posted up this image, shock value, saying that white means death as a reverse to what we actually mean. I would then post images of black tumors and the likes, and of course these things were ignored. Here are images of cells dying, turning black in a state of necrosis, while still attached to a living person. Why doesn't the affected area turn white? Why does it turn black if white means life, according to this pseudo-biologist? Here is a sister suffering from a mala rash with epidermal necrosis. It is clearly obvious that the areas where her face is infected with dead tissue and skin is the cause of the clearly black rash that you see on her face. Conversely, this is the state that our people are in now. They suffer from a mental necrosis. They are mentally dead. Prematurely, they are dead before their bodies perish, for they have no true knowledge of themselves. They promote the resulting factors of a mental necrosis, and our scholars and public teachers and lecturers today, they spread this mental death to anyone whom they can touch. They are necromongers. They spread mental death. They can no longer discern that coffee is not black, that it is only dark brown, because they have been using their own eyes to trick their own minds since they were programmed at an early age to believe that they were something that they were not. And this was passed on for generations until Prophet Noble Drew Ali came, and we new Moors who have resurrected to bring light to this truth have stepped on the scene. They have made up some of the most fantastical claims as to why they think that they are a black people, which forced me to write a book called Debunking the Myth of Blackness, just totally outright destroying these myths. I unabashedly disprove the craziest notions that you hear produced from my people who make up every excuse to hold on to this European slave labor. In this book, which is an ebook that only costs $3.99, I debunk the following claims. We are black because black is the color of the universe, and that Allah created himself out of the blackness of the universe. That we are black because black is the combination of all colors in existence, and that is why we are a black people. That we are black because melanin is black. That brown skin comes from a shade of blackness. That the inside of a mother's womb is black, and that's why we're black. That Osiris means or was called Lord of the Perfect Black, and this makes us a black people, and you can find that on the walls of Kemet. We are black because Kemet means black. That Allah took black mud, fashioned it into shape, and this is how the so-called black people were created. I totally destroy all of these myths scholastically. No opinion, no equivocation. Please download that book and read it for yourselves. Now on to the next misunderstood statement in our Moorish questionnaire, where it says white means purity. Being that my people are deaf, dumb, and blind by choice, they foolishly believe that anything white relates to the Europeans and anything black relates to our people. I once watched a seagull fighting a crow, and I was rooting for the crow because it was black. Gives you an idea of how this necrosis works, this mental death. Number 92 of the Moorish questionnaire says, what title does Satan give himself? Answer, God. Firstly, in Moorish science, we do not teach that God and devils are spooks. We teach that Allah and the devil is a part of the very makeup of physical man. So this question and answer tells you that we are referring to a physical person when Satan is being referenced here. What Prophet Noble Drew Ali is doing here is leading you up to the very next question and answer, which is, can you define white? To which the answer says, white means purity, and purity means God, and God means the ruler of the land. So what Prophet Noble Drew Ali is ultimately explaining to you is that white has nothing to do with the skin tone of a people, but of the status of the people. And so long as you call the European a white man and claim white supremacy is dominating you, you will forever be a mental slave. He is saying that the physical manifestation of Satan right here on earth, the ones seeking to rule the world, gave themselves the title of white or God for this very purpose. Let us prove this further. In one of the most critical pieces of literature of this time entitled The Invention of the White Race, The Origins of Racial Oppression in Anglo-America by Theodore W. Allen, a European who maintains that there is no such thing as a white race and considered him and his people European Americans, and the critical analysis of said works given by a Dr. Jerry B. Perry, Ph.D., where it states, when the first Africans arrived in Virginia in 1619, there were no white people there, nor, according to the colonial records, would there be for another 60 years. Winthrop D. Jordan, author of White Over Black, found that after about 1680, taking the colonies as a whole, a new term appeared, white. He continues, during my own study of page after page of Virginia County records, reel after reel of microfilm prepared by the Virginia Colonial Records Project and other 17th century sources, I found no instance of the official use of the word white as a token of social status before its appearance in a Virginia law passed in 1691 referring to English or other white women. Given the informing principle of a racial oppression to deny, disregard, delegitimate, previous or potential social distinctions that may have existed among the oppressed group or that might tend to emerge in the normal course of development of a class society, the white race, an all-class compact of European Americans to keep African Americans out and down, did not exist and could not then have existed. It is an actual fact that Europeans and Moors on this land were a part of a working class system. Research into Bacon's rebellion proves that the Moors and Europeans and other races on this land or other nationals worked hand in hand with no racial boundaries between them whatsoever. You see, what this is ultimately relaying to you is what Prophet Noble Drew Ali expressed to us. What title does Satan give himself? Answer, God. And can you define white? White means purity. Purity means God, and God means the ruler of the land. As Theodore W. Allen's extensive research concluded, the Europeans would create this white caste society and tell other Europeans that in order to receive state privileges, that they had to accept this new system of white society. And this is how the system of racial oppression was born. This is how the black and white race dichotomy began. It has nothing to do with a genetically white or a genetically black people. The only thing you have to do is do research into these instances and you'll find them to be factual. Remember in my video, Black Status versus Moorish American Nationality and the issue of reparations, I highlighted a case by a man named Mustafa Hefni, a brother just like the rest of us, a Moor who is still fighting to be black in this country. How can a man that looks like me and you be considered white? This man wants to be considered black because that is what he thinks that he is, black. But the U.S. keeps telling him, no, you're white. Why? Because it tells you right on the Census Bureau website under Federal Directive 15 that these classifications should not be interpreted as being scientific or anthropological in nature. How can you claim to be a biologist and ignore a system that was designed specifically to give us a slave label that has nothing to do with anything relating to science or anthropology? It just goes to show you that the blind are leading the blind right off of a cliff. But the Moorish Americans are here now, and we're putting things back into their proper perspective. What this also proves to you is that the pale-skinned nations of Europe, who are governing this portion of the Americas at this time, want to keep you locked into a perpetual state of mental slavery by keeping this caste system going. And now you have blind, deaf, and dumb scholars who are literally helping the Europeans perpetuate their own slavery among our people. Again, I call them lobsters in a crab barrel. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, if you are not careful, your own brothers will put you right back into slavery. Europeans were frequently labeled as black in this land, as well as in Europe, thus proving that these terms, black and white, are mere caste systems that have zero to do with race unless the deaf, dumb, and blind masses of all backgrounds accept it as such. Please do not take my word for it. Do research and let the historical record speak for you. Well, what about white meaning God? Well, in Moorish science, we teach that the Triune Allah breathed forth 7 spirits before his face, and that these are the creators of everything that was, is, or evermore to be. In Egypt, the sun was revered, and its light was given equal reverence to its physical self. The combination of the true colors, the 7 colors of the spectrum, produces white light. Proof of this can be seen when you shine a white light through a prism and the 7 colors come out of the other end. You find the same exact thing in a rainbow. The rainbow essentially reveals the composition of white light that our eyes cannot detect in the spectrum. These 7 colors coincide with the 7 sounds or octaves inherent in nature, and thus the 1 becomes the 3 and the 3 becomes the 7. Again, Moorish science encompasses all sciences. Every time you call the European white, you empower him. You call him your God. Every time you call yourself black, you cut yourself off from divinity and admit to being his opposite. Some of you even call him the devil, Satan, a beast, a snake, and yet he rules and you follow. And he rules your train of thought and knows that so long as you recognize and accept his caste system and non-biological classifications, he will have you mentally enslaved forever while he makes billions. And you squeeze the dimes from the poor because you make them believe that you can save them with rhetoric. And this is why the brother Inky calls himself now the Black Prophet. And I guess we can spell that P-R-O-F-I-T. This concludes another session of myth busting. This may be my last video responding to anyone because it is starting to become a waste of time. None of those who are out there that call themselves black power scholars or generals or young phenoms who've written dozens of books and activists, black activists, even some of your and my favorite scholars, as well as some Moors that don't follow the Prophet, they will not step up and debate me on this issue and many others. They talk in circles to each other all day about the same nonsense, all the while feeding their sheep while shearing their wool off at the same time. Do know this, change is coming, a change in thought activity, and we Moorish American Muslims are leading the way in this front. The meek shall inherit the earth. The Moors will inherit this nation. Those of a mental slavery mindset, they will just become subjected again, and this time it is going to be worse. I hereby challenge the guy calling himself Minister Inky to a public debate. he can bring his partner Ali Muhammad along with him so that they can both be exposed. If he or they can show and prove that we are a black people, while an opponent is on the stage refuting their claims, then I will cease calling myself a Moor and call myself a black person with black skin from here on out. I will promote the fake ISIS sovereignty scheme as well if they can defeat me. And if they lose, they must come sit up under our temple for 6 months, learning real information to go back and teach their flocks, as they are grossly misinforming all who care to listen to them. Also, for the record, the Amber Institute does not offer the caliber of information offered at Holistic University. Please be clear, the Amber Institute does not offer nationally recognized certifications and or degrees in herbology, iridology, nutrition, and Qigong. Please visit holisticuniversity.co for more details. Stop being tricked into spending your money with pseudoscientists. At the end of the day, you will find that you wasted your money and your time. I leave you all with love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice.